Hello. Welcome, Mercedes. Hello, Cassandra. Hi, Krista. Hi, Katie.
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. Yeah, please, everybody, write your name in and where you're calling from, your LinkedIn profile, and your favorite color. Please warm up the chat. So, yeah, that was name, LinkedIn, favorite color, where you're calling in from. Okay, thank you. Thank you for warming up the chat. Hi, Sue. Hello, Reyes. Hi, Deanna. Hi, Julie.
Hello.
Please take a moment, write your name in, your LinkedIn profile, and where you're calling in from, and your favorite color. Welcome, everyone. Hey. Hello, Ann Jeanette. Hi, Seema. Yeah,
Hello.
Hi. Please warm up our chat and write your name in and your LinkedIn, where you're calling in from, and your favorite color. Hi, Marianne. Thank you.
Hi, Anjana.
Yeah, please write in your name, where you're calling in from, and your LinkedIn profile, and your favorite color. How are we doing, Sarah? Should we put the slide up?
Yes, it looks like we still have a couple people that we are waiting on, but feel free to share, Janet.
Yeah, there we go. Hello, Lee Marie.
Hello, hi everyone.
Hi. Yeah, please sign in the chat with your name, LinkedIn profile, your location, and your favorite color. Thank you for signing in, everyone. It's great to see all the different places. Let's see. Hi, Mona.
Oh, sorry, I just said hello, but I was on mute.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, please take the moment to sign in and your LinkedIn profile, where you're calling in from, and your favorite color, please. Hi, Gail.
Hello.
Okay.
Perfect.
How are we doing, Sarah? Shall I move on? We got more people coming in?
Looks like we are cleared the waiting room, so we are ready to move forward.
All right, great. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. We are so thrilled to have you join our global virtual event, Leading with Inclusion. My name is Anjana Utarid, and I am the COO of Upward. Upward is a global networking organization accelerating the advancement of executive women through the implementation of member and corporate programming to support diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Would the Upward staff please just wave your hands so everyone can see you? Hey, great, great. Also, a very big thank you to Sarah Lake, who will be managing our Zoom and the chat throughout the program. Please feel free to write all your comments, questions, and Sarah will mention them to Janet. I am so thrilled to introduce to you our speaker, Janet Miller Evans, who emboldens, educates, and inspires executives, leaders, and their teams to interact with authenticity and succeed in today's complex world. Following a 25-year career leading professional service teams in Fortune 50 organization, Janet has coached clients across 45 countries. She is a coach, speaker, facilitator, and workshop leader known for establishing rapport, building trust, and equanimity. The industries she has served include healthcare, technology, legal, and professional services. Janet's certifications include Marshall Goldsmith's Stakeholder-Centered Coaching, Professional Certified Coach, International Coaches Federation, Team Coach, European Mentoring and Coaching Council, IDI Assessor, Emotional Intelligence and Trauma. She received her DEI certificates from Northwestern University at the University of Georgia. Janet is a fellow at the Institute of Coaching McLean, affiliate of Harvard Medical School, a member of the Forbes Coaches Council, and a faculty member of the Global Team Coaching Institute as a co-practicum lead. Janet enjoys traveling, hiking, and spending time with her husband and 2 daughters. Now, without further ado, please take it away, Janet.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Angela, for that introduction. And I was listening to that and going, maybe I should shorten that
Oh, no.
and spend a little more time just talking about inclusion. But thank you. It is an honor to be here and so happy to have so many of you join us. As we talked about and we put into the chat box our favorite color, and our subject is inclusion. The first thing that came to my mind when we're talking about inclusion is how we can include everyone and build a commonality. And we start with the simple thing of everyone had a favorite color. So we all like color. And then we think about it as we see things through the eye or the lens. Everyone sees things through different lenses. And I think I saw someone to put a deep purple or an explanation of the shade of purple that they like. So we see things differently, but as we get to know each other, we drill deeper and we find we have commonality. We can find inclusion just by the fact that 5 people already have a commonality of liking blue and 2 people liking green or pink. And when we think about the spectrum of life and diversity, we can use those differences and those commonalities and make an even greater world just by blending together, such as red and yellow make orange, or yellow and green, yellow and blue make green. So that's when we think of that, we think about diversity, we think about inclusion. So just wanted to open up with, we already have a lot in common, even before we start. We wanted to, what we'll cover in this next hour is an introduction and a welcome. And again, talking about inclusion and leading with inclusion, defining inclusion, understanding the why of inclusion, developing a high-tech mindset for inclusion, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll have a brief breakout room so that you can share your stories and become involved. And how I like to do this is just be interactive. Angela shared a little bit about me, but the other thing that I wanted to add about me is the 360 me. Not just my professional accomplishments, but the whole me. I'm a wife, a mother, a sister, an aunt, a friend, a volunteer, a hiker, a reader, a traveler, and a leader. So all of these things combine to make me who I am, and just combine to make everyone who they are, not just one particular flavor of who they are. And when we talk about inclusion, that's how we get to include others, by getting to know them as a 360 person. So a little bit of housekeeping before we start. We want to make sure that you have your cameras on if possible. because we all want to be included. But I do understand and we recognize there are times when we can't come on camera. So, but still want you to know that you are included. We want to learn from each other, share with each other, be interactive. I'd like for this to be interactive. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat box. I also can see if you raised your hand, and so can Sarah, who I appreciate is helping me today. And we want to share with each other and we want to have fun with it. The topic of inclusion. So before we get started, anybody have any questions? Anything they want to share? And again, please feel included. So let's jump right into it and define inclusion. Inclusive leaders are leaders who interact with the diversity around them and build interpersonal trust and take the views of others into account, and they're adaptable. Today's society is calling for us to be more and more inclusive. And with the unprecedented events that have happened, this is creating a demand for organizations and leaders to be inclusive, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's a smart thing to do. And an inclusive leader influences change by connecting with those and others around them on a radically human level. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that and dig deeper into that. When we came into conclusion, here are the facts of what's today's landscape. And that is over $8 billion is spent on diversity programs. Having a diverse workforce does not necessarily lead to inclusion. Korn Ferry did an analysis of 24,000 leadership assessments and determined that only 5% of the leaders globally are defined as inclusive. When we talk about the money spent on this to help leaders become inclusive or teams and organizations become inclusive, by the year 2026, it's projected that this $8 billion figure will double to $15.4 billion. So when we talk about inclusion, that word inclusion, it has become connected with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Whereas diversity, equity is a part of inclusion, but inclusion should encompass everyone. All groups, all people should be encompassed in inclusion. As we talk further about that, there may be ways that we as leaders, there are ways that we as leaders can be inclusive leaders and utilize the diversity and differences of all of our teams. So again, when we talk about inclusion, the first thing that comes to mind is DE&I. So how did we get to this point in talking about inclusion and DE&I? Let's talk about what got us here. And passion led us here. Passion for equality. Back in the 1950s to the 1960s, we were talking about the civil rights movement. And then as we move forward from the civil rights movement, which was the effort for equality and equal treatment under the law, we moved more into affirmative action. And affirmative action came in the 60s and 70s. And then as we moved from affirmative action, and we moved into diversity in the workplace. And diversity in the workplace encompassed those marginalized groups and helping them have an opportunity to be included and involved in the discussion. And we were talking about things such as age, disability, sexual orientation, cultural background. And organizations recognized that businesses could be more effective and benefit from diverse teams. And we moved from DE&I, or we moved from inclusion and diversity into inclusion and equal opportunity and employment. And that was where we came into equal opportunity laws, and we looked at how to protect employees from discrimination. And all of this was about marginalized groups and about causes. And today we moved into global diversity, and we talk about the DE&I efforts around the globe. And with, of course, the United States, in many cases, leading the way, because these efforts started again, and the causes and challenges came based upon particularly in the US, the race or the ethnic identification of employees. And as we move now in today's time, we're talking about intersectionality. We're talking about the differences of gender identification or gender assignment. And we've emerged to this critical point of looking at and evaluating the policies, the laws, and the regulations that encompass and allow for us to be a more inclusive society. So this is how we got to where we are. And today, continued advocacy groups are now looking at and talking about systemic biases and policies. So all of these things have led us basically to how do we include, who do we include, and what does this mean? So I'd like to share with you now, just in that backdrop, a perspective of DE&I and inclusion as given by Simon Sinek. So if you just watch this video with me.
So here's what happens when you give someone cause, right? You look for all the ways to bring that cause to life, and you need the diversity and inclusion to see opportunity or see breaks that are gaps, because we all have different perspectives and different upbringings. Not better or worse, different.
Yeah.
Different, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's like even, let's just draw the line on like racial lines. We're like, you know, rich people are happier than poor people. Are they? You know, it's like, I know some people who came from meager means, who they understand teamwork, they understand resilience, they understand loving your mother, they understand gratitude, they understand hard work better than anybody, and they are good.
Yeah.
And I know some people who came from very wealthy means that never learned the skills of adaptability, that never learned the skills of coping, because everything came easy, and they struggle through life. So it's how you approach it. It's not the circumstances. This is Viktor Frankl stuff. If you can't change your circumstances, you change yourself. You know, this is Viktor Frankl 101. We cannot control the world around us. What we control is our attitude. And so what diversity and inclusion is all about is about perspective. And so when you give people cause, they will look for ways to bring the cause to life through their perspective. So we have a cause in these United States. Our founding fathers wrote down for us in the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. This is an idealized state that we will never get to, but we will die trying. And different people who have different perspectives, you can see trying to bring that cause to life. The abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, civil rights, gay rights. Somebody with diverse opinions and diverse upbringing said, hold on, I'm still not included in that. And so, you know, we start a new effort, and all of those imperfect and ongoing in their own rights. So when we have a vision, when I say inspired, safe, and fulfilled, I only have my own perspective.
Yeah.
And I have unconscious bias, and I have blinders. But if I have lots of people on my team, we all have our own unconscious biases, and we all have our own blinders, but together we have a broad view.
Yeah.
And I need people from different religions, different races, different sexuality, different job experiences. I need people who have experience in something we've done before. And I love hiring people who have no idea about this job because they'll bring a new perspective.
Yeah.
I love putting people in jobs they don't know how to do. Just like I'd like taking people who are different than me and saying, how would you solve this problem? And that's the thing we forget, which is, you said, it's a program based on numbers and based on color or sexuality. It's none of those things. It's about perspectives. And different people have different perspectives and different upbringings and different perspectives, and all the, you know, infinite number of perspectives that exist in the world because of all the combinations and permutations.
Yeah.
And the best companies are diverse because they have diverse thinking,
Right.
diverse ideas.
Right.
We make jokes constantly about, you know, boards or companies that are made up of old white men. Why? Because there's one perspective. That's the joke. The joke is it's one perspective.
Yeah.
And so the counter to that is, if it's not just old white men, but it's a diverse group of people with diverse experiences, Magic happens if there's a shared set of values and a shared vision. Without the shared values and the shared vision, then all of that diversity will subdivide into their little tribes, and they'll go and eat at the lunch tables all completely separately. And then you need your diversity and inclusion program because you never understood it in the first place.
So when we talk about what Simon just said, thinking and reflecting on that, the reason I showed you the previous slides and the history of DE&I is because, as Simon said, it was all about a cause. And whether it's a women's movement, whether it's a civil rights movement, whether we were protesting a war or whatever it is, it's been a part of our culture and our society in the United States since our founding. So when we talk about inclusion, again, it's back to everyone being included, because the causes separate different issues and they need their own attention. But when we talk about leading with inclusion, we're talking about leading everyone who's a member of our team. And when you stop to reflect, everyone is different and everyone wants to be included. What Simon brings forward is having that shared vision and that shared values, that shared mission, when everyone comes together and they're working in that direction for that cause and everyone feels included and to be a part of that, still honoring their differences. An inclusivity mindset includes self-awareness, emotional maturity, positive intelligence, emotional leadership. It all comes back to how we are interacting and how we're communicating and treating others. Unconscious bias is with all of us. Conscious bias is with some of us. So we have to look at, again, focusing on the diverse thinking, diverse ideas, and including everybody. Those causes that are championed and that were championed starting in the 50s is what led to this current state that we see with diversity, equity, inclusion. And so when we hear that word inclusion, then we are speaking to who should be included and why should they be included and how should they be included? And the answer to that is everyone should be included because everyone wants to be treated with respect and dignity, and everyone has a different perspective, which can add to the collective good of the whole. Leaders must evaluate themselves and talk, and when they think about inclusion, to which the degree the employees are embraced and able to make meaningful contributions. I'm going to pause here. Does anyone have any questions or any ideas or want to share anything on what I've just shared with you? Again, this is collective learning, and we can all learn from each other.
Feel free to take yourselves off mute to speak up, or if you wanted to add it in the chat, we'll read it out. Whatever feels most comfortable.
Yeah.
I'll have the question. Oh, sorry. And
Hey.
hi. You know, this is, you kind of know all this stuff, and it's trying to put it into practice. For example, I'm part of the D&I group, and then trying to come up with ideas to make sure that we're all doing this in a fun way rather than trying to just do training and put everybody through training, because it feels like another thing we have to do, right? So just trying to find new ways or to include people and make sure that everybody, or the management and the teams, are all doing the same things. That's the part that I'm battling with, is to get ideas around those things to do.
Great, thanks for sharing that. And we're going to talk about some ideas as we go further, because you're exactly right. The key to it is, again, how do we put this into action? And as leaders, we put it into action by modeling. And we're going to talk about, again, some ideas and some ways. We won't be able to go in depth into tactics, but that is the next phase of the tactics and having that discussion. So again, if I'm at a high level, jump in and ask a specific question, because I want to make sure that I'm answering your question as well, and you leaving here with something that you can use. When you think about that too, what can you use? My idea and my success for this workshop would be that you walk away with some new idea or concept that you will make a transformation in you and your leadership. and you think about what would the success of this session be for you, and make sure that you get that, or that if you feel that you should ask a question or you need some more insight, feel free to let me know.
Thank you.
Yes, and I saw another hand also. Anne, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. So one thing I'm curious about is sometimes when we apply this, everyone should be included and everything should benefit everyone, it doesn't necessarily change the power dynamics. And so sometimes if things are, let's say, equally applied, it doesn't change those who have been underrepresented from getting access to the types of things that the majority typically get. How do you navigate that with what you've just described about everyone should be included?
That's a good question. And as again, Simon said, we have to start somewhere, and we have to start with what we can change, what we can impact within our own environments. And then as we're at the tables and as we're able to speak, to help and contribute, to help influence and make the changes as they need to be within the organization, the first place we have to start is within our teams. Are we making sure that there's a level playing field, that there's fairness across the board, that our employees feel included, that those who are on our teams, not just our employees, but even in our peer groups, are they included? Are we supporting those voices? Are we amplifying others that may appear to be marginalized or appear to be excluded? So that's where I would say we start at the beginning. And I'm going to continue to move forward with some other ideas, and maybe this will help us also. So when we talk about this, and it's been alluded to, and I'm just going to put it out there right now. I need you to confirm, though, you can see my screen, that you can see the DE&I fatigue. So, I'm sorry.
We can see it.
Oh, great. So when we talk about DE&I fatigue, we're talking about think about when you heard inclusion, and think about what you said about another workshop, another training. When we talk about inclusion, and Angela and I talked about this when we were planning this seminar, inclusion has gotten connected with DE&I. And you see the heads roll, you feel the stress that the leaders and the teams are experiencing when someone mentions the inclusion, diversity, equity, along any of those words, because they have become associated with the idea of it's only about marginalized groups, and then certain marginalized groups, and our biases come in, and our analysis of what's going to happen, it just triggers us. They're thinking, I don't want to attend another workshop. I don't want to hear another word about it. But inclusion has to be modeled, and it has to continue to be modeled, and it has to be separated from the causes. Again, that's why I included that with what Simon is saying. The causes are different from having, as a leader, creating an environment of inclusion. And what it's come down to is right now, if you think about it, it's really, as Simon said, unattainable. It's unattainable, unrealistic that everyone is going to go to the norm of the status quo, the others, of a white, heteronormative dominant culture. That's really not what this is about. This is about differences. This is about making sure that people are able to be themselves, that they are able to be authentic, that they are able to show up and feel comfortable, feel welcome, and determine their own sense of belonging. So when we talk about why people are frustrated, is because we're making others of the quote unquote dominant group or dominant culture. And that really is not the objective of what we want as a leader when we're talking about inclusion. We want to find that everyone can be a part of our team, a part of our groups, and that those who are identified in that dominant culture don't become frustrated in the process as well. And that's what we're seeing today. And that's why as leaders, we want to step out and create a mindset of inclusion for everyone. And if you look at it, when you think about what's happening in the landscape with all of the DEI programs and all of the money that's being spent, really the efforts for racial or ethnic identifying groups remain fragmented. LGBTQ groups are facing stigma and continue to face the stigma. And even only a small percentage of those who have physical disabilities are even represented or even focused on when we're looking at our efforts. So that's why inclusion is so important. And as a leader, it's important to have a mindset of inclusion, because the inclusion can be the antidote to effective teamwork, collaboration, member engagement, and retention. So why is all of this important? Why is inclusion important? Inclusion is important because diversity can lead to the best results. And for the individuals, the employees will be empowered to take risks. They can bring their authentic selves to work. And when we say authentic selves, that's not the whole self. We do need to leave some of us in different aspects. It's how we choose to show up in certain settings. And then for the team, greater productivity, it diffuses the chaos and it focuses on facts, as well as looking at some of the emotional aspects, but primarily the facts. And that allows the group to move forward and reach the objectives. And then for the organizations, you'll see the statistics there, but these statistics come from the researchers both in Canada and with the World Economic Forum and the DEI lighthouses organizations. But these are the statistics that they're finding of why inclusion is important. But again, recognizing and understanding the fatigue that comes along with, again, the words involved with DEI and belonging, and even to the point that the words, they try to change the words and say, okay, now it's belonging, dignity, and justice, not DNI. But no matter what word you use, no matter what combination that you put together, what is important in the bottom line is that the human beings and people, the teams that you work with, your peers, your organizations, they're feeling like they're a part of the conversation, they're feeling like they're heard, and it requires a radical mindset or a radical change in mindset transformation to look at this as inclusion in a broader perspective that encompasses the causes of DEI, but is not a prisoner of those causes. So, any comments there? I see a comment in the chat and relating to Simon's idea, asking teammates how they solve a specific problem. So I'm glad, Hannah, thanks for sharing that. And we can take that away. So I do this is the world according to Janet. And in my research, I've decided that there are elements for a mindset for high-tech inclusion. And I call it high-tech inclusion and leading with that, that tech mindset. And what is tech? Tech is trust, because without trust, there is no leadership. Tech is empathy. If you want others to thrive and create conditions for belonging, having empathy, creating that psychologically safe space. Communication. Brene Brown talked about vulnerability, and it's the courage to show up and to be seen when you have no control over the outcome. And when we talk about inclusion, we can help with our actions to control part of the outcome. When we talk about a lot of the causes and a lot of things that's happening around us, we can't control those outcomes. And it's the courage to be able to speak up and to share. stories. And the last one is humility. And when we talk about humility, I'd like for Nelson Mandela to speak for himself on the idea of what is humility.
Well, I had said that you're one of the most humble, well, the most humble person I'd ever met. I will tell you that when Mr. Mandela arrived today, he said to the producer, met with him in the room, and he said, "What is the subject of today's show?" And they said,
Oh, I'm sorry again.
and she said, "Nelson Mandela, you are the subject of today's show." He goes, "Oh, all right." So, so you are not modest, but a very humble man. I wanted to ask, because I think that is the characteristic that stands out for you above all of them, that you are a peacemaker inside yourself. And how do we begin, those of us who aren't leading countries but are just leading our own lives, leading our families, come to a sense of truth and reconciliation with ourselves to be a peacemaker? How do you do that?
The first thing is to be honest with yourself. You can never have an impact on society if you have not changed yourself. And one of the most important weapons in changing yourself is to recognize that peace. People everywhere in the world want peace. But humility is one of the most important qualities which you must have. Because if you are humble, if you make people realize that you are no threat to them, then people will embrace you. They will listen to you.
So, as we can see, in terms of what can we do, we can start with ourselves and being honest with ourselves, recognizing where our biases are, recognizing where we have impact and how we can make that impact with our own groups and our own teams and in our own teams. It involves emotional intelligence, which is the precursor to emotional regulation, where you can name your biases and identify the patterns within yourself when you're leading, and then take action to regulate your mood and response to create an inclusive culture in the environment where you sit. I'm noticing in the chat about Karen Taylor, and she is she's Audrey's aunt, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Audrey's aunt. And when I was doing this research, I did want to point out that I was looking for women leaders who talk about inclusion and diversity. And I would tell you, when it comes to the subject of diversity and inclusion, there were very few that I found that spoke to it in terms of relationship D&I. A lot spoke to emotions, of humility, of vulnerability, of emotional intelligence. Connecting it with the D&I framework is a bit challenging for many people. And that goes back to how we have conflated the exercise of and the actions needed for D&I with the actions needed just to be a good leader. And being a good leader, the D&I actions that keep people from being marginalized or keep people from being excluded, they will happen. So when I was listening to one of Karen Taylor's sessions, she was talking about belonging. And there is a difference between inclusion and belonging. Inclusion is making sure that you're, as leaders and as people, we're doing the efforts that others feel heard, that they feel seen, that they can speak up. The subtle nuance to me with the belonging is that while we can embrace, we can be empathetic, we can be considerate, the belonging piece has an ownership with the other person. because I can feel included. I can be involved. I can be at the table with all of and the organization can have all the right numbers. But when it comes to belonging, there's an ownership of the person who wants to belong to say, this is where I need to be. This is where I want to be, because that includes values. That includes your own morals, because I can be in the right organization again and have all the inclusion in the organization doing all the right things, but it just may not be the right place for me, because we have a different value system. We have a different, so when it comes to belonging, again, that is really a two-way street. When we're talking about inclusion, we're talking about, as particularly as leaders and as individuals, helping others feel that they are a part of the efforts, and that we do embrace them in belonging, and that the rest, the choice is up to them. I see some yeses, and I happen to know Karen Taylor personally, and I'm going to reach out and let her know that she is one of a kind and well loved. So are there any, as I pause there, are there any comments? Anything comes to mind or resonate with anyone?
I have something. Sorry, I'm not on video. I
That's okay.
went for a run this morning and haven't showered yet.
That's okay.
I think one of the challenges, having, been an executive in a couple of very large organizations, is when you talk about inclusion and how it's up to the leaders to include, and maybe this is sort of a heretical statement, but I'll throw it out there in a environment of trust. I find that, the people from the different cultural backgrounds, they're not as interested in being inclusive as of other people. It's all about including them, not including everybody. At least my experiences with some of the, companies that I've worked with. Have you experienced that? Does that make any sense?
It does make sense. I'm not sure of the exact example, and I don't know if you want to share that exact example. But one of the things is, in this effort, again, when we talk about this, we in the United States in particular, we've equated this to the marginalization of groups based on the color of their skin, or based on their sexual orientation, or based on their cognitive diversity, or whatever. But we've really parsed this out to look at specific groups. And that has set up sort of sometimes an antagonistic situation. My response to that is, everyone has a story, and everyone has a right to their story. And as a leader, we want to make sure that everyone is included and everyone's story is heard. And what you'll find is some people are ready to share their story just openly and equal, and others are not willing to share their stories as equally. But we know that some stories are existing out there. So when you say that they aren't willing to listen to other stories, what I would encourage is asking those who you feel are not sharing their stories if they are willing to share their story, and do they want to share their story? Does that address what you're saying there?
I guess if I was going to, and you're right, it's probably because, we mix up our diversity efforts with our inclusion, our belonging. It's all one big thing. But and again, very specifically, if I was going to give a specific example, I would have, we would have ERGs, and obviously we would have our Black ERG. And then, it really was a lot of times where every time anybody said anything, we have this, I'll tell you a funny story. I'm taking up too much time, but I'll tell you a funny story.
Oh, that's okay. I'd rather focus on you than me talking to you.
We had a Scottish, we had a Scottish group, and so they created their own little ERG, and they called it the Scottish Clan, because in Scotland, a clan means a family.
Family. Mhm.
And our Black ERG went nuts, like nuts, crazy over it, and demanded that we changed it. And I get it, but at the same time, there was no inclusivity. There was no, well, why did you do that? There was no like, there wasn't a beat taken, right, in between. And so it just ends up being really confrontational, to your point, very adversarial.
Right. And Mona, thanks for sharing that. And I would say this as a leader, and then this is not an indictment of anyone or focused on anyone, just in general conversation. And that's the first thing, is not taking this personally, because the subject gets emotional, and some people begin to think it's about them, and it's not. It's a broader issue here. One thing is, again, understanding diversity, and we're talking about differences. Just helping them immediately, what came to my mind to the Black ERG group is, let me share with you some diverse perspective. Clan in Scotland is CLAN. If you are referring to what you are taking offense to in the United States, it could potentially be the word KLAN, two different words. And clan to them means family. So first, to me, it would be an education to the Black ERG group. And you are going to have that resistance from pockets of groups at all times. Understanding where they're coming from and coming to a common ground and a common solution is ideal. But at least as leader, at least starting to work towards that with the explanation and understanding, I think will help. It's not a panacea, and it's not, I'm not, I don't have on rose-colored glasses of what's happening in the world, but having those conversations are very, very important, because the Scottish group has every right to their culture and their history as the Black group. I'm in a group right now. It's an international group, and they choose to call themselves the tribe. How am I handling that right now? Is I say, hi team, hi group. I'm not going to confront them about tribe until I really get to know them, and that I understand where they are coming from with tribe, and also weighing how important it is. Now, again, that's back to, as a leader, emotional maturity. Everybody's not in the same space, but it does take patience. Leading with inclusion takes patience. It takes understanding. Back to tech, it takes building trust. It takes empathy and allowing someone to share where they are and saying, I understand your point of view. It takes communication, explaining what, and sharing what is the history of this? How did we get here? And then it takes humility, in that I am here to do no harm. I want to help us get to a place where we can work together, where we can collaborate. I'm going to make a quick modification here in the interest of time. We will not do the breakout group. We're going to continue and have this open discussion. It is so valuable, and I thank each of you for sharing and bringing this to the forefront, because this is the part of this inclusion that needs to happen. Real meaningful conversation, real stories of what is happening, so we can talk about how we address it. Now, I've shared how I address things. If any of you have a different point of view or something you want to share that can help your colleague, absolutely, by all means, please feel free to do so. So, I'm looking in the comments. Katie says, we've heard from men in our company being upset because we created a specific women's group. They don't understand what our goals are: support and fairness, not trying to receive more than. That is the challenge. When people look at life as a zero-sum game, meaning that if you receive something, I'm going to receive something less, rather than there is plenty and enough for everyone, we get that feedback. And that's why I talked about D&I fatigue, because what has happened is it appears to have set up a group of people as having something that they don't deserve. That's what they're hearing. And that's why leading with inclusion is so important. And it is not easy, but having those men who are concerned, speaking with them, either one-on-one or collectively, but hearing their concerns and sharing with them why the women's group is important, why the women feel marginalized. You may not reach every man, but you will reach some, and things will slowly begin to change. Change is not swift. Trust me, I I know. But again, when we talk about being leaders, we've stepped up and we've said, we want to be a part of change, and we are willing to take those extra steps and do what's needed to help bring about the change. So again, if the men don't understand what the goals are, what's the way that you can help them understand the goal, share the goal? Seema, thanks for sharing your response.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I thought that was so interesting. I actually encountered this somewhat recently. I apologize for not being on camera too. I was out gardening during my lunch break, and it just, not the greatest vision there. But anyway, I actually, at our latest event, I've never had this happen to me before, in the many, many DEI events that we hosted as we were tearing down and kind of, cleaning up after the event. I had a man approach me and he said, well, it's so interesting how the women have their own group, kind of like in that, sort of tone of voice. And I could already tell what he was getting at. But I kind of put the ownership, and I like, the talk about perspective. I put the ownership back on him and said, you're so right. Actually, I would love for you to get involved, but do you think you could help us even more by advancing our mission and by acting as an ally? Sort of like, not like assigning homework, but almost making it a little more like task oriented and sort of giving him a job, not to sound like stereotypical or anything, but I feel like many men I've encountered, they really like having tasks, or if they have like an action item that they can just take it and run with it, they seem to appreciate it more instead of being told like, oh, well, sorry, there's nothing we can do. So that's sort of my perspective, and from a recent encounter that I had. And, he even reached out to me afterwards and apologized and said, wasn't my intention to come across as rude or abrasive or harsh, which is unfortunately in this day and age more than most guys would do, is reach out and take accountability for the actions. But I just told him how grateful I was, and that I really looked forward to seeing him at future events. And I encouraged him, in the meantime, just to think about the women in his life that have had an impact on him. Surely he has a mom, maybe even a sister or a cousin or a close, friend who's a woman that he can help advocate for. So I feel like that's how I was able to turn it into what could have initially been a little bit of like a prickly situation. I try to make it a little more positive with a better outcome than just saying, oh, well, and having the conversation stop there.
Thank you for sharing that. One thing in my research, and the more and more I find, when we talk about the subjects and the conversations and how we feel guilty about them or our responses, I'm learning more and more. The more I learn, the more I understand. If you think about it, men have had men's groups, men's secret societies, men's organizations forever that we can't attend, that we don't even know about. So it's not something new. But again, it's when you feel that there is a lack that then you sometimes want to lash out at things and say, well, why are you doing this? Well, we want a group where we can talk about our common issues and support each other, just as men do in their clubs and in their organizations. It's no different. Even if you think about at work, and you think about this, and I was just thinking as you were talking, what if there was a men's organization? where men
That's
could.
why it was so hard for me to not be immediate. I just wanted to be sarcastic so bad. And I said, well, if you just want your group so bad, why don't you just go and make it yourself? It's like, no, no, no. I had to kind of calm my, it's like, that's not going to resonate very far with him if I'm just immediately sarcastic, because he will pick up on it and it may drive the wedge further. So, but
But
you're
Sina,
right.
to your point,
Yeah.
not saying that sarcastically, but if men do need a support group, why shouldn't they have one if women have one?
Right.
And so not sarcastically, but offering that. If you like for me to help you get started and talk about, the topics you want to talk about, and I'd be more than happy to support you and even come. But that's when we're talking about inclusion. When someone feels excluded, they lash out, the things they don't understand. And as a leader, our job, again, is building that trust, that empathy, that communication, that humility, that we can see all sides, all of the differences. We may not be able to answer or make things right at that moment, but we have given them the sense that they are included in the discussion, that we do care about them just as we care about others. And that, again, if I leave you with the separation of causes versus shared mission, vision, and goals. So I know we're almost about to wrap up. So what I want to share with you is this. When we talk about that team and that empathy, and let me know if I'm sharing my screen. I lost you right now and seeing you, but yeah, I think I am sharing my screen with you. And real quickly, when we're talking about that team, high tech, remember this, high tech leader of inclusion, humility, trust, empathy. You see this circle? If you could plot out in each one of these, where do you feel you are in your leadership with developing trust, showing empathy, communicating effectively, and building humility? And under trust, trust is about listening. Trust is about asking, how are you? What do you think? And listening for the answers with intent to hear, with intent to understand. And if you were to plot that for yourself, then look at it again through the organization. And I can send this to Andrea and she could send it out to you. Plot, where is the leader? Where do you think you are? Then where do you think your team is? And where do you think your organization is? And I guarantee you a lot of the organization thinks they're high on trust, empathy, they're high on all of these things. And then as you break it down, because the communication is filtering differently, you'll see it different for different groups. But when you plot that out for yourself, look at where your gaps are. And that's where you know where you can begin to do some work. That's where you know where you can start. One step at a time. As I said, my goal, success for me from this conversation with you, is that you'll walk away and look at these elements of being a high-tech leader of inclusion and focusing on how you can grow or improve or use each of these elements. We have 1 minute left. Do we have any comments, questions, or emotional outbursts? I take those.
I have a quick comment, Janet. First of all, thank you so much. That was excellent. I do want to remind everybody there is a survey in the chat, so please do take it so we can learn more about you and how to keep continuing these excellent programming for you and others. And I do want to just toss it to Hannah Hart really quick because she had a great idea to share with all of you.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful conversation. I just wanted to share with you guys, I know we're talking about where are these programs for men. Upward does actually have a program in place that educates men how to become allies in the organization for key female leaders. So this is actually a kind of a usual gap in DEI services that are offered. Where are the where are the workshops to teach men how to champion for women in their career advancement. So I'm just going to put a link if you guys want to learn more, if there's any key male leaders that come to mind you'd like to invite. Our next cohort starts in September. So really important work, and we're trying to get men encouraged and motivated to want to be educated and want to help those female leaders. So I'm going to put that there, but thank you all for coming. It's nice to see all your faces and get together. And thank you, Janet, for the candid conversation. I really, really appreciated it.
Thank you all. It was an honor to be here.
Thank you so much, Janet. And thank you everyone for taking the time out of your busy day and joining us here. We hope you'll return back soon.
And I am on LinkedIn under Janet Miller Evans. Feel free to link with me. Bye-bye.
Hey guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.